Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin on Rugby. This is the 80 plus column. It's what I call a video newsletter where I have a weekly Wednesday waffle on things that are going on in Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. If you look here, you will see a list of topics, and basically for the next while, I'll be harping on them. So let's just crack on, starting with what we call the wrap of a wrap. At this stage, every week throughout the rugby season, we'll be talking about the latest wrap pod. Basically, our feature presentation every week is a podcast based on the most recent Leinster and Ireland match from the previous weekend. We talk about it, we analyze it, we see how it fits into the entire season, talk about individual players, performances, all that's going on with both Leinster and Ireland, whoever had played the previous weekend. And obviously, there's no matches at the moment, although the preseason does start this week. We won't be doing wrap pods for those preseason matches because they're away from home, they're not on TV, there won't be a lot of coverage, so we won't really get it. We'll be relying on other people's coverage for that, so we won't do full wrap pods for them. But when the season does kick off, we will be back doing them, and we'll actually start our season 6 of our podcast on September the 15th, which is the Sunday before Leinster's first URC match. And we're going to have two contributors on, two relatively new ones. One is only going to be making his third appearance, and the other is going to be making his debut. Now, we still have our full crack team of contributors that you've seen for the last couple of years on with us, talking about Leinster and Ireland. And, they're still here. We just added a couple of new names, and we're going to be talking to them, looking ahead to the season for our season 6 premiere, which I can say will be recording on September the 15th. So we can look forward to that. Okay. Let's move on to this week's topics. And next, we have a feature we call the Front Five, which is basically I pick out a selection of 5 eye-catching, egg-chasing quotes and links from around the rugby media landscape. And our first article this week comes from extra.ie. It's written by Martin Healy. And the headline reads, Ireland's Felix Jones sensationally quits England coaching job after just 8 months. That's huge news. There's obviously a lot going on there. I mean, we talk about the controversy from, there's a lot going on with the RFU, I should say. There's, clubs going out of business, and they've only got 10 teams left in their premiership, so 8 of those get to qualify for the Champions Cup. It's a bit of a shambles at the moment with their domestic competitions. But and then in the national team, of course, their previous head coach was Eddie Jones, and there was a lot. We all know what comes with him when he's in charge. But now it looks like just things aren't going great behind the scenes. They've had some great results. They beat us, of course, at Twickenham in the Six Nations season. But overall, they're still in that what is now a clear second tier of the Six Nations, with sort of Ireland and France sort of out on top at the moment. They made a couple of waves down in New Zealand in their test series, scored some tries and stuff, but still nothing was happening. And clearly it looks that behind the scenes, things aren't happening. And Felix Jones, I mean, he's with South Africa. He's a quality coach. He's shown himself, and it was a really big job for him going here. But according to this article, Jones was not happy with his role as defense coach, as he was reportedly told back in March 2023 when he first agreed to join that he would lead the attack. And that's fair enough. You make your agreement going into a post, and if it doesn't happen, you got to have some kind of leverage. And it looks like he used his and left. It'll be very interesting to see where he ends up because I mean there'll be a lot of clubs and test sides looking for him at his services. So that'll be definitely worth following. Okay, now to our second article, and this is from BBC.com. This is about David Nucifora, who was recently the performance director for the IRFU, and for the past 10 years. Wasn't popular with everybody, but now he seems to have landed in a new job. We've got, of course, David Humphreys doing that for us now. But according to this article, it's basically the headline reads simply Nucifora to call the shots at Scottish rugby. So it seems that they've seen what's happened with Irish rugby. Now there's a lot of people not happy with his role in Irish rugby. And I suppose I can understand that. Now, his job was to oversee all of Irish rugby, and you did see some aspects of Irish rugby in a much better state when he left than when he got here. The men's team, definitely. The sevens program, definitely a big plus in his column. But I'd say there's a few fans of Irish women's rugby who might have something to say. I'd say there's a few in the club game that might have something to say about how their lot improved over those 10 or so years. But overall, you know, the IRFU at least spun it as a success, his tenure here, and now he's moved. He's going to Scotland. Interesting. Now shows how much who approached who. It was pretty obvious that the Scottish Rugby Union went for him. The quote from this article I've chosen is, "He is not full time, but he's effectively the performance director for the next 2 years." That's two statements that you can't really balance. I mean, you're a national rugby union, a top 10 national rugby union. And you put someone in charge of the entire program. That's men's, women's, all of it. You know what I mean? Overseeing the whole operation, and he's not full time. Surely that's got to be a full time job. But that's obviously how much they wanted him. They had to offer him the chance to be able to do other things, I guess, or you know what I mean. So, but we'll see what happens. That's a very interesting decision over in Scotland. Okay, our third article here comes from RTE.ie. The headline reads, "Scott Beeman confirms a new Ireland women coaching ticket." Now, basically, they've announced he's got his team around him now. He's taken over the setup. He's looking ahead. There's got some big matches coming up down the line, leading right up to the World Cup next year. And his coaching ticket here is it's a good announcement. It's good to see that he's got a good team behind him. I have one teeny tiny wrinkle, and I suppose this. I mean, if I'm gonna think this is my chance to say it. It's a really hot take, and I don't want to make too big a deal of it, but I do want to say that it's that the immediate coaching ticket around him, four coaches, they're all men. Okay, now you'll see in this article that they have included Maz O'Reilly, former lock for the Irish Test team, great player, involved in many great results for Ireland, performances for Ireland. And she's included. She's included in the picture in this article. But even the name of her job, her role is as an intern. The word intern is there. So it's just the optics of it. Okay, I want to make it clear. Gareth Steenson, Hugh Hogan, Scott Beeman, Alex Codling, Dennis Fogarty, they're all quality coaches. Okay, nothing wrong with them. I'm talking about the optics, considering all that's gone before. There are some excellent coaches out there that have actually played the women's game. There's some, that team back in 2013, 2012, those great teams from there. Tanya Rosser is in charge at Leinster. You got Fiona Hayes, Niamh Briggs down in Munster. There's some excellent coaches coming through the system from that era who the players would be more likely to look up to. And you got Maz O'Reilly there involved as well. I'm just talking about the look of it from the outside, that it feels like, oh, well, when it's the test team, that the top level making the big decisions, it really should be men. I'm not saying that's what they're saying. I'm saying that could be how it looks. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I've made my point there enough. Okay. But the fact remains is that they've got some big matches coming up. They've got Australia on September the 10th. Ahead of the WXV1, which I think is in Vancouver this year. They're going to play New Zealand. They're in the top tier this year. They were in level 3 last year, playing, I think it was Kazakhstan and Colombia. But this year, they're playing New Zealand, Canada, and USA. 3 big matches against 3 of the top women's teams. They'll really be tested now. I mean, I'm not expecting, any kind of result from any of those matches would be amazing, considering what this Irish women's team has been through in recent years. But that's a lot to look forward to. Lots to look forward to there. And of course, you got the Six Nations next year, hoping to build on last year's third place finish. And then, of course, the World Cup at the end of the year, which is great. They qualified for, having missed out in the last one. So overall, and I keep saying this, it's a net positive, the progress of the women's game. We'll talk about the women's interpros a bit later. But overall, the progress of the Irish women's game has been positive. It's just sometimes if I see a little bump in the road, I'm going to call it out here. The look of that coaching ticket, there's just one aspect of it, and I've said all I've had to say about that. And one last thing before I move on from the Irish women's team, of course, it was also announced this week that they have 37 professional contracts for the national team. Now, it needs to be pointed out that includes the sevens program. So so the 15s team is not going to be able to have a full squad of professional players, because a lot of them are going to be traveling. So 37 sounds like a lot. Oh, that's 2 full teams. It's not. A lot of them are going to be traveling with the sevens. So when the 15s are playing, they're not going to be able to access from that pool of 37 players. But still, again, it's an improvement. 37 contracts is a lot more than we've had in the past, and we're still heading in the right direction. So I want to say I am behind that as well, and that is good to see. Okay, article number 4 is from a series of articles I've been following over recent months, and it's under a heading I call Hogg Watch. Stuart Hogg retired from international rugby last year, and then of course it was all over the news that he had a lot of domestic issues, domestic problems. There was a court case outstanding, and I would have been happy just to leave that and let it play out and let him have his day in court, see what happens. But the fact of the matter is, he came back, he came out of retirement, and there was a lot of articles, a lot of puff piece articles, kind of ignoring the fact of his court case and basically saying, "Oh, now he's thinking of coming out of retirement and he's going to play for Montpellier." And he was linked with different clubs. Montpellier is where he ended up, and they're back in the top. They're still in the top 14. They had a horrible season last year, but he signed for them. It's like I say, someone is innocent until they're proven guilty. But on the other hand, like for example, I haven't been charged with this, so it's okay. I think it's okay to remind everyone that he has been charged and he does have this case coming. For me, I would recommend he just stays out of the public eye until all this is done. The court case is coming up. I think the trial date is September the 10th. So I every time I see an article about him, I want to remind my viewers about it, for the reason that he's got the court case. So the quote from this article: Hogg was charged with stalking by engaging in a course of conduct which caused his estranged wife fear and alarm. Okay, that's the charge. He needs his day in court to prove it. Like I say, my suggestion would be just stay low, lay low, stay out of the public eye. But he hasn't been able to do that. And we'll see what happens with the court case. But I just, even this quote, this is from Wales Online, who I think would be a little bit more objective than maybe some Scottish publications who may want to kind of defend him. But even this article says, Hogg, who until this summer was Scotland's leading try scorer, that's got nothing to do with this. Okay, he's a rugby player. He's in the public eye. We do know that. This is why this is news. But what he did on the pitch has absolutely nothing to do with this case. That's my point here. But anyway, we'll see what happens, and we'll see what articles come out when the trial date has come and gone. Okay, so now it's time for our clickbait of the week. Our fifth and final article in our front five segment is, I always call it clickbait of the week, where I just pick an article that I think where the headline doesn't quite match the article, or it gives you a false sense of what the article is in. And this is the second week in a row I've included Philip Benton. I think I'm ganging up on him. He's from Rugby Dump. The headline reads, Jacques Nienaber reveals the real reason RG Snyman signed for Leinster. Now, my thing with that is, when I saw that, I'm like, oh, you mean the real reason? You mean not because his wife was doing accountancy exams in Ireland and they were keen to stay and he couldn't stay at Munster and Leinster came in for him. You mean apart from that, there's a real reason behind all that. So I clicked the article, read it, and says, nope, based on a Jacques Nienaber press conference, that's exactly what happened. And that's what we all knew anyway. So there is no real reason. So it was like, okay, so you got me here for nothing. But I was caught this time, I have to admit. So I should really practice what I preach and know a bit better. But anyway, so maybe as a consolation, I get to award them our clickbait of the week. And listen, RG Snyman, apparently he's injured. He's not in the South African squad for the Rugby Championship. We don't know, will he be available for Leinster for the new season coming up. We'll definitely need him. Jason Jenkins had a great season last year, and we want Snyman to come in and fill that role. And he's definitely capable of doing it once he's fit. So we will see. We will see what happens there. I know a lot of Munster fans will be amused, I think, to say the least, if we don't avail of his services, considering how little he was able to play for them over the years. Although he did play for, he did kind of help them win a trophy. So there is that. Okay, so that's our front five for this week. Now, the next segment we do each week is our Leinster squad update. So normally what would happen is Leinster might have played last weekend, and then on the Monday or the Tuesday, they release an injury update on all the players who are maybe just about to come back in the team or maybe long-term injuries. We have a quick look over that. Plus, I will give you my predicted 23 for our next match. Now, we're playing Bordeaux. Leinster do have a friendly against Bordeaux on Friday in the Chaban Delmas Stadium. It should be an interesting game. You got Joey Carberry playing for them. Now, they had a friendly last weekend against POW. They won 42-24. They put completely different teams out in each half. And Joey Carberry played in the second half, was involved. I saw a couple of highlights from it. He was involved in the play a lot, involved in a couple of their tries. Like I say, they won 42-24. We'll see what they do similar this week, selecting two different teams. They were strong players playing. There was Jalibert, started the first half. Billy Barry, as we call him, played as well. So they're not holding back their star players. So it'll be interesting to see if Joey plays against us. So that's this weekend. Now, obviously, like I say, we won't be doing a wrap pod about it because I'm not sure what kind of coverage there's going to be. They do release footage. They released footage of the game against POW, so hopefully they'll do the same for this. We'll be able to have a look and see how Leinster played and be interested. And I won't even try to predict the team Leinster's going to name. I'm assuming they'll, because it's a Friday night kickoff, they'll announce the team at 12 o'clock on Thursday like they usually do. So we'll keep an eye on our social media channels, Facebook and Twitter and all, and you'll see updates on that if they name the team towards the end of the week. So yep, there's that. And of course they're playing Northampton then the following weekend, Northampton Saints, also away. It's a shame, like Munster are playing Bath this weekend at home. It's, you really want to see those home games. We're itching to get to a game. Even our first URC game of the season is away. It's in Edinburgh. We got the Aviva the following week against the Dragons. We've got that extra weight, just dying to get out there and watch some Leinster rugby live. So anyway, so that's the update for now. We'll see how the boys get on in Bordeaux, and we'll be able to talk about that next week. Okay, now it's time for Troll Patrol, where we detain someone who has made comments on rugby and we call them out as the gaslighting, bad faith actors they clearly are. This week, I want to be sure I include trolling by someone who follows the same team or teams as I do. So I've gone with this tweet by Leinster and Ireland fan Gorto Shea. Now, the rivalry and banter between Irish and South African online commentators has grown steadily since they joined the URC and fully blossomed around that two-match series at the end of last season. And we'll talk a bit more about the Rugby Championship in our competition updates section a bit later. But I thought this was a decent bit of trolling from Gorto Shea, where he goes, "Am I wrong, or is there a lack of South African bravado about the weekend now the squad has been announced? We were told you could put out 4 different teams, so a few missing forwards should be nothing." This is all around the fact that Eben Etzebeth and others aren't able to make the South African team, and they might be lowering their expectations over the match against the All Blacks. But like I say, we'll talk about that later. But there's no two ways about it. This tweet is trolling. I do see the humor in it. I know Gorto Shea's stuff. He doesn't mean anything bad necessarily by it, but many commentators wouldn't see that as lighthearted. I'm starting to think I do this feature because I want the trolling to stop. It's more that I just want to keep doing this feature in itself. So I suppose we'll never know because I can't see it stopping anytime soon. So I'm sure we'll be back next week with something else for our Troll Patrol. I mean, it's just that my goal with this segment is to, a lot of people say ignore them. When you see the gaslighting, ignore it. But no, for me, I'd be like, take it out and put it there and says, you're trolling. You're part of the problem. Like I say, there's a fine line between the banter and the trolling, but I still want to call it out because I think we do need to be aware it exists. Like I get involved in banter myself, but I don't know. There's a line somewhere, and I haven't found it yet. I'm not sure where that line is. But what I do believe, more of all, that the important thing is we shouldn't just stay off Twitter altogether. A lot of people go, "Oh, I'm not going near Twitter. There's too much." No. You can go on. Just call out the trolling when you see it. That's my opinion anyway. I do think overall social media does a lot to help the experience of following sports when you know how to deal with whatever's going on and what people are putting out there. So anyway, so that's my Troll Patrol for this week. Okay, we move on now to competition updates. Basically, We feature Leinster and Ireland, so therefore throughout the season, our feature competitions will be the URC, the Champions Cup, the Six Nations, those main principal competitions. But there's a lot of other competitions going on in rugby, and this is where we have a quick look over all of them and keep tabs on how they're going. And we're going to start this week with the Women's Interpros, or the Winter Pros, as I keep trying to call them. They had the third round of matches last weekend. They play a round robin for 3 weeks, the 4 provinces, and then the top 2 go into the final. The bottom 2 have a third place playoff. So on Saturday, we had Ulster playing Leinster at the Kingspan Stadium. It was our third fixture. And now I want to apologize. Last week, I suggested it was on TG Carr. Now, the Ulster-Leinster game wasn't. The Ulster-Leinster game was on BBC One Northern Ireland. TG Carr did stream it live on their YouTube channel. I'm sorry I didn't know about that. I missed that. They were showing the American football at Croke Park that was on at the same time. But anyway, I got to see the Leinster match at the Kingspan. Well, I wasn't at the Kingspan. I watched the stream, and it was a great game. Leinster played very well. Gemma Farrell, who actually used to play for Leinster, she led the line at number 10. She's very good at controlling the play, keeping us playing in the right areas and knowing how to move the team down the pitch. We got some good tries. Robin O'Connor scored. Robin O'Connor got a try. You got Ruth Campbell. There was, let's see, Tilly got on the score sheet. Kari. There are some excellent scores throughout the game. Now, just a little bit on Ulster first. This was, Leinster ended up winning 39-14. So it's a big enough margin. But I want to stress that this has been a very good series for Ulster. Now, you look at the table, you see them in 4th place. Maybe that doesn't look so good. But the fact, and they didn't get any wins. But when you consider where they have been, there have been some really big, heavy defeats for Ulster over the past few years, and they've improved. They got a draw this year against Connacht. They came back and got 2 bonus points against Munster. They got 2 really good tries against us when they got their chances in the 22. They were able to finish them, and they did threaten at times. But I think Leinster were just too good on the day. And just one big shout out for I was wondering in the starting lineup. I was like, "Where's Aoife Wafer?" She's a flanker who always gets involved, and she's very, very powerful forward, and very, very strong in the loose as well. And she's gets Jackals a lot of turnovers. And sure enough, she came on. You saw her red scrum cap. She's like, you could say Josh van der Flair is the men's version of Aoife Wafer. She came on at the start of the second half, and literally kickoff, Ulster first possession, boom, Aoife Wafer, red scrum cap down. Penalty to Leinster. No sooner was she on the pitch than she was involved. And I was happy to see that Aoife Wafer was included in those 37 contracts that the Irish team, because she's definitely seems like a star and a really important player for this Leinster team. And I'm assuming she'll start for the final on Saturday. But anyway, listen, those are the results from last weekend. You got Munster and Leinster getting away wins there, and they're going to play each other in the final. This is on TG Carr, 4:15. It's at the Kingspan. Ulster will play Connacht in the third place playoff before it. So there's no excuse really for missing this. These matches have been brilliant. It's been a series, and I'll say it again. I say it every week. I wish they could just play over more weeks. I wish they could maybe play a home and away series, or maybe home and away twice, 12 matches throughout the season, and then have a final. I know that will affect the club game, and I know how important the club game is, but it's just getting the women's game out there, and the branding, and the public, the general public already have an affinity with the 4 provinces and the branding of the 4 provinces. So they should play more often. But listen, I've said all I have to say about that. Okay, now we have a new competition to feature starting this weekend. It's one we've never covered before. It's actually the Pro D2 in France. It's the second tier below the top 14, and they're kicking off in August, because of course they are. The French season seems to go on 13 months of the year. But listen, they're starting this weekend, because just in case you don't know how the Pro D2 works, there's 16 clubs. They play each other home and away, so that's 30 matches 30 league matches they have to do throughout the season. I mean, you look at the URC as just 18. Now, to be fair, the Pro D2 don't play in Europe, so they've only got their league matches. The 18 for the URC, there's Europe matches on top of that, but even those don't really add up to 30. So it's a really attritional season. They play pretty much week in, week out, right the way through to July, and it's a real punishing season. But there's a lot of reward for it. The winners, the way it works is at the end of the season, the top 6 go into playoffs. So even if you finish top of the league, you're not guaranteed promotion. You've got to win the playoff knockout bracket and win the final. And the winner of the final, they get promoted to the top 14. The runner-up in the final has a playoff against the team that finished 13th in the top 14. And the winner of that also goes up. So last season, it was Montpellier. We've talked about their problems. They had a horrible season. They finished 13th. Now they've signed Stuart Hogg, like I said earlier. But they played Grenoble. They went away to Grenoble in the playoff and just won 20 points to 18. So they stayed up. Now, the very first game and this season in the Pro D2 is on Thursday. They have a match every week on Thursday nights. Hopefully someone will pick up the TV coverage, because I think those games, and that night in particular, is a good night for rugby TV coverage. You get a lot of rugby fans watching that Thursday night match if someone picks it up. But this is Oyonnax, which is the team that came down from the top 14 last season. They're traveling to Brive, who made an interesting signing over the summer. They signed none other than Courtney Laws. That's very interesting. Some interesting names went into the Pro D2. Johnny May went to Angoulême, and George North went to Provence. There's a lot of quality players in that division. But if you're going to sign someone like Courtney Laws, you've got one thing in mind, and that's getting back up into the, Brive. They have a great history themselves. You might argue they belong in the top 14. So they're going to make a big signing like that. They can expect him to bring them up into the top league. So we'll see what happens there. They're starting against Oyonnax on Thursday. We'll be following all those matches throughout the season, giving you updates, the latest scores, the league table, and the next fixtures week in, week out on this video. So that's something to look forward to. Okay, that's the Pro D2. Now, Rugby Championship. They had a week off last week. They're back, and everyone's traveling. The first matches were in New Zealand and Australia, so they took a week off. Now we're in South Africa and Argentina. Argentina against Australia, playing late on Saturday. But of course, the big one is the Springboks against the All Blacks. They're going to play 2 matches in South Africa instead of home and away. Because of the big distances they travel, they're going to play 2 South Africa this year and then 2 in New Zealand next year. So it's like I've said this before, there's a real chance for South Africa to win all 6 of their matches. But as we said in our Troll Patrol section, they do have an injury problems. They don't have Eben Etzebeth. But the thing is, if they got such strong squads, they should be able to deal with it. And what they seem to be doing now is whenever they don't have Eben, they take Pieter-Steph du Toit and put him to 4. They've already named their team, of course, by Wednesday for the following weekend. And it's still a strong team. They've got Ben Jason Dixon coming in to play number 7. That'll be interesting. They're still going with Sasha Feinberg at number 10. So they're really sticking with him, and they've got a lot of faith in him with Cobus Reinach, as his scrum half. So it is a strong team. Of course, it's a strong back 3. Got Arenze, Colby, and Fassi, and Damien Delente and Jesse Creel have been outstanding as well in the center for them. So it's a really strong lineup. We'll see how the All Blacks line up later in the week, but that is definitely a game worth watching. Okay. That brings us on to quickly the Currie Cup. Again, I've been following that this season just to see how the URC teams do, and just to get see a bit more about South African rugby and get an idea of what their provincial game is like. They had round 8. The Currie Cup is played over 10 rounds. It's a league format, and then the top 4 go into the semifinals. Round 8 was last weekend. The feature match, which I watched, was Western Province against the Sharks. Wasn't exactly a classic. The Sharks jumped into a lead. Western Province came back, but the Sharks pulled away at the end. Nothing really amazing there. But that defeat now kind of rules the Western Province, who are the Stormers team, by the way, ruled them out of of making the top 4. So it's basically you've got the Bulls and the Lions at the top of the table, with the Sharks, Cheetahs, and Pumas all around the same kind of points. So over the last couple of rounds, 2 of those 3 will join the Bulls and the Lions probably in the semifinals. Next weekend, definitely the feature match is Bulls against the Lions, because 1-2 is always the top fixture. But unfortunately, Sky is showing, it's not showing that. They're showing the Sharks against the Griffins. The Sharks need the points, but they should really get them. The Griffins have kind of been losing heavily every week, so I don't know if that's a real big match worth watching. But I say most South African fans will be focused on the Rugby Championship fixture against the All Blacks anyway. So that's the Curry Cup for this week. Okay, so that just leaves me with my what I call my squirrel clip. Okay, it's where I check my phone to see if any news is broken while I'm recording. And in the meantime, I'm going to distract you with a 1-minute clip of actual rugby. Now, throughout the season, I'll probably include a clip from the most recent Ireland match in this segment. But this week, I want to go back to that epic tour in New Zealand in 2022. It's the third and decisive test in Wellington. And just like the previous 2 tests, Ireland started with an amazing confidence in their own ability. In this case, I don't think anyone would blame us for taking the 3 kickable points after winning a penalty in the opening couple of minutes. But in such a big match, Sexton had faith in his pack and went for the corner, and we didn't let him down with a maul which saw Josh Vanderfleer go over, and we all know what happened from there. Anyway, here's the clip while I do some scrolling.
Sevu Reece, no, come back. They're playing their own little game here. It chose to kick off, so they immediately were able to get a territorial advantage. And hello, this is a very interesting move. With 3 minutes gone in the game.
Matter.
So Dan Sheehan to throw. Taken in by James Ryan. And Ireland looking to impose themselves early. They've got it under control here. They're still going. And they score early. 3 times in a row. And it could be Josh Vanderfleer.
The courage of Johnny Sexton and all of his Irish players to turn down a very kickable 3, to go for more, and they got more in abundance.
Okay, well, I just had a quick scroll. There's no real major announcements. I just saw a thing about your man Louis Rees-Zammit, who's there was all this hype about him going over to the NFL, but of course he didn't make the NFL roster. There's so much talent there coming from the colleges. People who have played football, American football, all their lives right through college. Why would especially the Super Bowl champions take a risk on a player who's played for a completely different sport? It's talk about taking a punt. I mean, that's what it would be doing. But anyway, and the other thing, I spoke a lot about women's rugby. There's a women's and rugby conference coming up in the next couple of weeks. So that'll be interesting. We'll be following that and see what comes out of that. It says the conference will showcase the journey that women's rugby has taken over the past 30 years in Ireland, and will be given all those involved in women's rugby, both men and women, on and off the pitch, ideas on how to continue to grow the game and women's involvement in the sport. That's brilliant. That's a good idea. Once they're willing to listen, there's been negativity. There have been negative things. Once they're allowed to broach those negative things, it's an open forum to discuss that. I'd be all for a conference like that. But anyway, listen, I've gone on about enough, and that's our extra topics for this week. Right, we're going to leave it there. All going well, we'll be back next week with hopefully some decent reporting on Leinster's friendly in Bordeaux, as well as the usual front 5 articles and competition updates. And so in the meantime, I hope you'll keep tabs on all our social media feeds, wherever you are in the world. Be sure to enjoy your rugby. Stay safe, everyone. Slán.